Hello and good morning, everyone. For this webinar part 1, which is about South Korea REACH regulation, and this is also known as K-REACH. And this part webinar, we are looking at how the companies who are exporting chemicals, especially from India, the manufacturing companies manufacturing chemicals in India, exporting to South Korea, and how they actually proceed with the compliance and access the Korea market. So this is kind of market access regulation. So you need to apply for certain requirements before you can access the market. So this webinar is jointly organized by REACHLaw and CHEMEXCIL India. And I again thank you all for joining, and I guess the participants are still coming, but we will respect the timing. So I will start with the webinar, and so as I mentioned, this will be two-part webinar series on K-REACH registration and exemption. Both are equally important when you do business with Korea. And for this part, we are focusing on upcoming deadline, which is end of December 2024, and belongs to the registration of chemicals if you export them in Korea more than 100 tons per annum. So this is part 1 today. We will be also discussing more about how you proceed and how you start if you are really looking to enter Korea market. And then part 2 is exactly nearly 1 month after this webinar, is also helping you understand how the exemptions are applicable. And we will focus polymers because India is having large segment in plastics and petrochemicals and all downstream industry, and then specialty polymers. And these are also have a good market when you export to Korea, because they in fact have good petrochemical and plastic industry. So it's a good opportunity to see how these compliances you can meet. So this will be on 28th of August, and I hope that we will have some repeat participants from today's webinar. So now I will also switch on the video so you can see us. I'm basically coming from New Delhi, and I will also pass this floor to CHEMEXCIL to do some opening remarks and before we start this session. So both Raghuveer and Praful is not available. I think they are having some discussions and meetings with ministry, but I think we have Vicky here. So Vicky, if you can do the opening remarks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all for today's webinar on K-REACH regulations. Dr. Jia Song, Regulatory Manager at REACHLaw Korea, and Mr. Gagan Kumar, Managing Director, REACHLaw India Private Limited, and all participants. Friends, as you are aware, the Ministry of Environment Korea published an Act of Registration and Evaluation of Chemical Substances on January 1st, 2015. The Act is also known as K-REACH. The recent amendment was published on April 13, 2021. The Act of Registration and Evaluation of Chemical Substances was published on January 1st, 2015, aims to protect public health and environment, which is achieved through 4 procedures, namely notifications, registration, evaluation, authorization, and restriction of chemicals. Under K-REACH, depending on if a substance is listed in the inventory, chemical substances can be divided into 3 categories, which are existing substances, new substances, and priority existing chemical substances. Compliance and procedures differs according to the substance and categories and tonnage of ban. Our today's webinar will be focusing on the regulations part as said by Mr. Gagan Kumar. So friends, if you have any questions related to this webinar, you may ask at the end of the presentation. Our speakers will answer to that. And I hope this webinar will add value to your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky, and I think also you have set the base for my presentation explaining participants. So I thank you, CHEMEXCIL, for giving this opportunity, and we are happy to associate with CHEMEXCIL to share our knowledge in this segment. So I'm now will introduce the presenters of this webinar. So myself, I'm Gagan Kumar. I'm the Managing Director of REACHLaw India Private Limited. I'm based out of New Delhi, and this is a subsidiary of REACHLaw Finland. Our head office is located in Helsinki, Finland. And as part of my role, I look after day-to-day activities of the company, and I'm also looking after the sales in the company. And then I have fairly like REACH and REACH-like regulations more than 15 years. I've been working, and this is kind of very interesting subject for our organization and in general to handle how to assist companies with these regulations. And I'm happy to share my experience and knowledge with the audience, and I'm available. If you have any questions, please send it to my email. So we will be happy to answer those. So now I will request Jihe to introduce the session.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Gagan. My name is Jie Song, and I am the manager of REACHLaw Korea. The Korea office was established in 2023, and I have been employed here since that year. I'm honored to present K-REACH in this webinar. It's my hope that today's webinar will assist you in becoming more familiar with the complex and challenging K-REACH regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jihe, for the introduction. And to save the bandwidth, I will switch off the video so that you can hear me well, and also we will save on the time. So before I start, it's a usual REACH law disclaimer and copyright when we present to external venues. And this is something for the audience that no representations or warranties are made. And it's basically it's the responsibility of the audience if they use this information. So please bear this in mind. And also the copyright is the standard process that we follow at REACH law. Now, I will introduce very briefly about REACHLaw Finland if there are participants who are new to this webinar. REACHLaw as a company, we are focusing on REACH and REACH-like regulations globally. And this is the main area that we provide services to the companies. And as you see on this slide, we have offices in 6 cities. So we are actually looking into the REACH and REACH-like regulations, and we are providing these services using our own subsidiary offices, be it in EU, which is basically the setting regulation for all other countries that are following this development, and also the changes which are coming up in few years down the line. So this is where our head office is based, is Helsinki, Finland. And I'm based at New Delhi, India. We are also looking into developments on these sides of quality and environment regulations. So this is where we belong. And then we are also present in Manchester for UK, similar regulations in UK. And we have also set up in Brussels for related commission and related advice on REACH and similar regulations. And in Istanbul in Turkey, offering similar services for REACH-like regulation in Turkey, KKDIK. And now in also Seoul in South Korea for K-REACH and Korea OSHA requirements. So this presentation is more towards the REACH Korea. So this is something which we will cover, but we are essentially into REACH and REACH-like regulations. And this is something that I mentioned earlier, that we are into market access services. So we actually understand companies' requirements, and then assist them with compliances in these markets. Of course, if you do not have presence in these markets, then you would need some representation. It's more of a legal representation, meaning that countries would demand local entity to file for the regulatory submissions, and they can then monitor and manage these registrations. So that will always be a local entity, and therefore we provide these only representation services in these markets as REACHLaw offices. So, and then going forward, all these regulations demand notifications and bigger dossiers like registrations, and then going forward, further regulatory control. So this is something we've been doing since already more than 14 years. I think this is something we can support companies in-house. And as you see on the right hand side, these are the regulations we support on these services. So, and as I mentioned, we now are operating from Seoul. So this is REACHLaw Korea Limited. We are now having our setup, and our team is happy to assist. And we have English speaking team there, so you will not face any challenge when you communicate with them. This is something important when you deal with the Korea specific regulations. And with this slide, I will mention that we, as REACHLaw, we provide full set of KREACH services, be it representation, notification, which is like late fee registrations, co-registrations, and lead registration is one of the main project, all kind of management, and as you see in this slide. So this is something we offer, and any companies looking to access that, whether they need compliances or they need some kind of exemptions, because Korea of course have different requirement on exemptions. So we will be happy to assist companies in these requirement, and feel free to interact with us if you need any kind of services. Then Korea also have some MSDS related requirements. This is different. We are not covering this in this session, but we will definitely cover this in upcoming sessions, and we will of course do it with CHEMEXCIL, some of the joint sessions. This is something related to your safety data sheets, and Korea recognize this requirements fairly different, and you need to also make submissions of these safety data sheet to KOSHA, and this is done digitally. And you also sometimes need representation if your importer is not willing to uh, basically cover your MSDS's information. So you definitely need somebody who can handle these submissions and authority comments as a representative. So and some more information, I think you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have dedicated webinars and short talks and comments, so feel free to subscribe, and you will also get notifications of upcoming sessions. We do it several sessions around the year. We've been handling this since many years, so you can see this depository on YouTube channel. And if you want to meet REACHLaw in person, I think there is one more event. Of course, we have many events where we not exhibit, but these are the events where we exhibit and have our own booth. So this is something in Istanbul. But in India, we do have some events which you can meet us. We are visitor in majority of events in India on chemicals. Then this slide I'm using because there was some development already this week. So as you see, what is happening around the world on REACH like regulations, starting with EU, the authorities are focusing more on dossier updates now. And we expect that the co-registrants will also receive decisions on whether their dossiers are compliant to the deadlines. And in fact, dossier update deadlines are going to be implemented, and some IT changes will be happening gradually. So we recommend companies to really look into the dossier updates and watch what are these deadlines. And some changes also will come on the Euclid side in future. So this is something which will help authorities to also understand your chemical safety report and how you are how you are updating that for your registrations. So I think many changes will come on compliances check. So the companies are really not doing this as authorities are looking at to have a good quality dossier at the first place. And then we are also looking at UK Reach. There are obviously some developments there with changes in government now. With Labour Party, there will be more changes, but we expect some development around fall 2024 with new strategy of registration, alternative transition model. So you can follow REACHLaw newsletter also on LinkedIn. We are quite active there if you want to know more what's happening. Then Turkey, there is also development that the deadlines have been extended and more guidances will come how to handle these stepwise registrations. So more information again will flow this year and next years. And Korea, of course, is the topic today, but India, there are some developments on the BIS side, which if companies are interested, we can of course help, but it's a very local requirements on quality aspect, not specific to the reach aspect. And reach is something which is depending upon how government is looking, this will be taken up. And most recently Ukraine Reach, which is also the news from REACHLaw, that who is also advising and helping in implementation part and the comments part. So this is implemented this week. So if you happen to export to Ukraine Reach, then you need to basically comply with these requirements. So with this, I will basically come to the agenda for today's session. I will cover overview of K-Reach. So I will set the base for GA to then take over and explain you how chemicals you need to register, what are the data requirements, what kind of process is involved, then cost and timeline. So how much time you need, and you need to really project well how you plan to register in Korea. This is very important in Korea, that you do a right project, define your project when you enter the market. Then some tips that is also important if you have any deadline for this year. And Korean government has some subsidy for SMEs. This is something which you must know when you enter Korea market. So you should be aware of that. This is the subsidy, and this will help you in some negotiation or discussion with your customers in Korea. So this is why we are keeping this information for you. And as REACHLaw Korea, we are, I think, providing all information that is available, and in all our webinars in future, we will see more updates as this regulation is also evolving. I will see that it's a 60 minutes, but we will of course have Q&A. We have received some Q&A also during the registration, and feel free to use us during this entire 60 minutes. Starting with the overview of K-Reach, and as I think Vicky also mentioned, that you can use chat box to send your questions, and we have team in our offices who will answer your questions during the webinar. So please feel free to use this opportunity and get your clarifications wherever you have on K-Reach. On overview of K-Reach, I will like to start. Vicky has already mentioned on these regulations, so I thank him. But K-Reach regulation was already in force 2015, so it's fairly old in terms of the regulation, and Ministry of Environment is the nodal ministry, which is like authority making decisions, changes, and when it comes to implementations, there are nodal bodies, autonomous bodies, which are implementing. We will see that. But since July, the Ministry of Environment has also announced this list of priority existing chemicals, which is around 500 chemical substances defined with their cache numbers, and they were supposed to be registered by 30th of June 2018. So if you do business or want to do business with any of these chemicals, even though they are existing, you need to apply for direct registration to access the market. And I will explain in the later part of my slides that how you can check how you start basically K-Reach work in the company. And then I think there are some changes down the line that K-REACH also modified for companies to do the pre-registration and have some extended deadline so that they can apply for registration. And this is only for existing chemicals, the existing chemicals which are known to Korea. And you can also see that whether your chemical is existing or not. We have some demo slides for this presentation. And I see they have a very broad spectrum. They are operating similar to EU REACH in a sense that what they want to achieve from K-REACH is, of course, high-level protection to human health, animals, and environment. So this is something which companies need to understand, that they have a similar objective. And that's why the quality of dossier they expect is in the similar manner what EU is expecting industries to follow. And since you are a non-Korean enterprise, we call it foreign manufacturers. In the legislation, it's overseas manufacturers. It's the same meaning. And if you export your chemicals to South Korea, then you can appoint an only representative. This is a legal entity based in South Korea to handle your submissions and all pre-registrations and registration. And this will give you free access to market in the sense that you are not relying on your importers registration. You can develop your customers in the South Korea market. And this is something which companies consider if they want to develop more customers and have a control on their sales and pricing. And this is something which is also helpful if they sell products to South Korea and going to other countries if they are into entering into formulation. So I would recommend this option if you are really interested in developing your chemical market in South Korea. Then also it was mentioned by Vicky that this K-REACH is actually, as it is mentioned in the legislation, it's on the Act on Registration Evaluation of Chemicals. So this AREC, if your customers are writing this, then it's nothing but K-REACH. And we are using K-REACH because it's more familiar nowadays. But actually, it's a AREC is the main term defined in the legislation, and they have corresponding regulation, which is decree and rules, and these are corresponding regulations on this act. Like India have an act, and then you have rules and regulations, orders, and things like that. So similarly, in Korea, they have a corresponding regulation, which is more on practical handling of this K-REACH, how industry should formats, data requirements, and other details. So it's basically a practical handling regulation to comply with the K-REACH. So every 3 regulations you must read if you're really looking into the deeper requirements and compliances. Now with the basic requirement, I think the K-REACH market access is same. If you are an existing substance, we will see what are the existing substance now. But if you're an existing substance and you are selling it more than 1 ton from January to December, then you can basically first you do the notification, which is a pre-registration or late pre-registration, and then you will go for registration based on the deadline, which we will see also. If it is not an existing substance, then it's a new substance. And new substance, essentially, you need to apply for, and there are like quantity ban, which is like 100 kg or more. But there is a change in legislation, which Vicky mentioned, and this change will be implemented from 1st of January 2025, which will be changing this 100 kg per more to 1 ton per more. So this will be now 1 ton per more from next year. Any new substance which you sell, you basically need to first register, and then you can access the market. So there is a timeline before you can access the market, not like existing chemicals. These are some of the definitions which we will use in the presentation, like existing chemical I mentioned, and there are some deadlines which you will see. New substances are also termed as non-phase-in substance, which is coming from the other country or specific to the EU. But new substance is that the substance which is not an existing substance. The KE number is defined by the Korea. It's an existing chemical. So it's a Korea existing chemical substances, and I think they have around 44, or we will see that 1,000 chemicals already there. Then NICS is the National Institute of Chemical Safety. This is basically overseeing the K-REACH registration, and there is also change which my colleague will explain, that there is a recent change that NICS is now overseeing the K-REACH registration, which was earlier a different authority. Then KECO is basically taking over the environment pollution, and they are also looking into the pre-registration aspect of K-REACH. So the initial information that you send to authorities it's this authority which will evaluate. And then we have like common discussion forum, which is when you make a pre-registration, then you can access this chemical substance information communication organization, which is known as SECO. And it's something similar to the CEF of EU REACH when you made your pre-registrations. And you can access this companies who are there, and they are basically jointly deciding how to register a substance in K-REACH. So this is a joint basically forum to assist in the joint registration process and collaborate. Then on if you have a legislation, there are of course exemptions that do not require companies to do any actions, but you need to carefully understand exemptions in K-REACH. So when it is exemptions coming from that you don't need to do, it's a completely out of the scope, is defined in Article 3 of the Act, and these are these substances. So as you see from the name, but these are definitions, so I just mentioned the name. If you have any clarification or guidance that whether my product fall into these categories, and can I make declarations on my own, so please obtain some expert advice before you decide on these statements, because sometimes the experience helps companies, and then your customers, your safety data sheet will of course mention these exemptions, so they know that their registration is not required. So always make some communication to your customers with some documents. It will help you to maintain compliance, and if there are any changes, then update those declarations. Then these are substances which are out of the scope of the pre-registration, registration, and notification defined in Article 11. And now Korea has two kind of exemptions. One's basically self-declaration, meaning that if you meet this requirement, which is on here, then you can declare on your company statement that these chemicals do not require pre-registrations or registration or any kind of notification, and is you can have a free access to the market. But again here try to declare and understand from expert that this is done correctly by you, and then once it is done, then you can follow similar practice for other chemicals following these definitions. So definitions are always important. And then we will have confirmation, which is you need from authority. So it's a very different from EU REACH. For example, you can still self-declare if it is coming to some conditions, but in Korea you need to obtain confirmation from Korean authority to be able to declare that these are exemptions, and we will cover this in part 2. This polymer compounds is the focus, but we will cover this in part 2 specific to these like research oriented chemicals, and what information you need, so what justification you will provide. There is a form that you need to provide and submit to the Korean authorities. So this is all done in Korean language, but the consultant will advise you what information is required and what is the quality of the information. Do you need to provide certain information in addition to those forms? So this is something that you will understand. So I would request participants to join the part 2 webinar. And then we have special provisions, which is like data requirements are less coming from the transported isolated intermediates, which is I think important for you because India is transporting chemicals to South Korea. Then I would like to explain this K-REACH. So this is something on the IT system. Of course, Korea is a similar IT portal. All submissions are digital, and but they do not have a standalone Euclid, so which my colleague will explain later. So everything is done in the IT system, your dossiers, notifications, pre-registrations, appointments. So this is the IT system which you can see on your screen. It's in Korea. And this is the website where you can access this page. And I also provided the English page where you can find chemical, which I was mentioning that how to check whether your chemicals are existing or not existing chemicals or new chemical substances. And you need official login, so Korean entities can only access this system, but it has all information on registration, appointment, only representative appointment, then joint registrations, notification, exemptions, everything is done through via this system. And if you go to the next slide, this is how you can check your substance status. So as I mentioned that there are around 46,000 and it is increasing because it's a dynamic. When new chemicals are registered, when they are fully acknowledged, then they will eventually be existing at some stage. So this will be dynamic. So right now it's 46,000, around 46,000 chemicals. You can of course download this Excel also if you want to have a standalone file. And if you use internet often, then I recommend to do it online only. And this you can do via cache number. So if your chemical cache number, then you just type your cache number here. This is the English page which is on your screen. And when you do this, you will basically, you will see this window. And here you will see the result. It will show a KE number. And you see that these are also toxic substance required preparations, restrictions and prohibitions, and control, and then there are other regulatory information and remarks. So this is basically your existing chemical if it has a KE number and if doesn't have any comments on these other columns. So this is also important that you understand these if it is written something there, but this is how you will determine existing chemical. And now it's existing, you can do a pre-registration, late pre-registration, and you can register using an only representative. And this is an example of sodium hydroxide, which is also listed in this PEC, which I was mentioning. And if it's existing, still it's an existing, but you see there is no grace period, which means that you need to first register this substance and then access Korea market. So you cannot pre-register and have a business now and register later. So this is where you can see this will show you no grace period, meaning it's a PEC substance. And this is listed here with this 239 entry number. Then this is the table example for the new substance. So if you see you have this cache number and it doesn't display anything, but it has a comment that it's a new chemical. And this is how you will say it's a new chemical. You can always validate this, your understanding, with consultants if you need, but this is how you can, the more you work, the more you will get confidence, and you can make good judgments here also at your end. So this is the something which I would like you to use. And going with the process, the first step is, of course, you need to find a good consultant whom you can rely on a long-term basis. And Korea, it's, you know, this market is very in terms of communication, you don't get anything in English. So it is you are highly dependent upon consultants. The information, guidance, everything is in English, and even if you convert it, you will not be able to get right information because it has different way of writing the guidances and documents. So this is important that you are really dependent upon the local representative for your business. And of course, your customers are helping you in the process, but this is something, an option one is that your customer or importer is taking care of your registration. And then you can sell to this customer only to access the market. And if you get any new customer, then you have to route your product through this option one, through this importer, because you cannot directly access the market and there is no independent decision making at your end. So this importer will basically either buy from you or buy from any other supplier in India since he has a registration. So this this is something not giving you more, I would say, but it depends upon the substance and the customer and your relationship with them. Option 2 is recommended, as I mentioned earlier, depending upon how you intend to do business. And this is where you need to appoint an only representative to take care of importer obligations. So they are obviously the person who will be contacted by authorities, inspected by authorities, and you are providing all correct information to them at the beginning and during the process and after registration also, so they can maintain their compliance and obligations as only representative. And this is something which you consider, but I would say that appointment of only representative is important to find a good entity there whom you can rely upon on a long-term basis. Sorry, this is something on the overview, what only representative can do. They can do, of course, the pre-registration registration. They are also used for exemption, as I mentioned, and we will see in the part 2 of this webinar series. And then they also handle all your CBI if you have any CBI that you want to report. Only representative is defined in Article 38 of the legislation. It's, as I said, it's a neutral entity, a person to manage this compliance. And for example, REACHLaw Korea Limited can become the only representative. And only representative, REACHLaw we uses all central, confidentiality and IT procedure. We implement same in other countries, but depending upon the IT and data handling and everything. So all expertise we need, as we have in EU, in other markets, so they can manage this legislation. And this is why we have a good team here to manage all the compliance requirements. We do not outsource anything, and it's an in-house expertise that we use to manage compliance work for our customers. This only representative appointment process is different from EU REACH. You need an appointment acceptance from authority. So in general, it's a 3 weeks process, and it starts with finding a right partner for you, an OR, then appointment through the agreements. There are certain set which is submitted to the authority, so it will always be in Korean language. And then you have to submit, an OR has to submit this to the Ministry of Environment. And this also includes the certificate of business of, for example, REACHLaw Korea. And then this appointment is taken for an approval process by the Ministry of Environment. And this takes sometimes days. And that's why this 3 weeks is something on the higher side we have mentioned. So once this appointment is confirmed, then any regulatory submissions can be performed. So this is a change in EU REACH, that there is no appointment. You just sign a document, an agreement with your partner or consultant, then you can proceed. But here you need to basically look into this appointment process. Then this is how it looks after the appointment is confirmed. And this is something you can always share with your customers, that this has been, first step or milestone has been achieved, and your chemical is covered by the OR appointment. This is the slide I'm using to explain you the differences in EU REACH and K REACH, because you are having familiar and you are already having registration experience in EU REACH with your consultants. So EU REACH, as I said, only representative appointment. Starting with that, there is no approval, but in K REACH you need an approval. The P-registration term is Korea's notification, but it's possible in both. Now in EU, it's not possible. It's basically no longer an option. But registration, I would say there's a similar 1 ton requirements, and of course there is some exemptions which is applicable, and there is changes, as I said, which is for the new substances will also apply. Right now in REACH it is same. So all substances require registration, but in K REACH now only new substance you need to register first. For other else, if your bands allows, you can do a late registration. Polymers in EU, right now these are exempted, but not for monomers, and it's also REACH's review may bring changes to polymer registrations. In Korea, polymers, again, if they are not meeting the polymer of low concern criteria, PLC, then you need to apply for registration with the reduced data requirement. So we will cover this in the in the next series, so please attend that. It's an important for exemption and if you're into polymers. Then exemption from registration, it's also, as I mentioned in KREACH, it's a self as well as authority needs to give you an approval before you can export your chemicals, and therefore it is important that you follow these exemption carefully. In registration data requirements, REACH has more or less set data requirements for a tonnage band. They have changed something last year, but then the regulations, it's a change in the regulation data requirement, but more or less it is fixed for tonnage band. In KREACH, of course, we have more data requirements for more volume, but if you have no classification, then the data requirements is reduced. You will see in the slides presented in the next part of this presentation. Both are joint registration. R&D exemptions are also there. Product notification like SPSs in EU-REACH, and these are like priority control substances in KREACH. Safety data sheet both require, and here also you need to have basically a reference to the safe use, what you submit in your registration dossiers. The information should be same, and then you also need to submit it via IT system, different IT system of KOSHA, and you also need a only representative for this submission if you do not use your importer. Very important is timeline to co-register. You reach is of course 2 to 3 months. It's also depending if you need some safety assessment, then it's more now. But for Korea, I would recommend to basically really be careful with your timeline and decision making. It will be definitely more than you reach, and it's up to 5 months. And now with the change in the authority as well as involvement of your importer, use collection, and you will see the dossier content in later part of the slide. The importer, your customer involvement is very high in KREACH registration. So I would recommend to start as soon as possible with this use part, and to see that how you manage your registration dossier in time. But more will be covered with by my colleague. So I think this is the last slide from my end. I will come back in the Q&A session again. So I will now hand over to my colleague Jihe to.
Thank you, Gagan. The objective of this session is to provide the detailed information of the chemical registration process and to outline the materials required. Next, please. Yeah, all in South Korea manufactured or into South Korea imported substances as such or as part of a mixture at 1 ton per year for existing substances and over 100 kilogram per year of new substances must be K-REACH registered. Registration tonnage bands are same as EU-REACH. The registration types are divided into full substance, on-site isolated intermediate, and transported isolated intermediate. Submission can be done in the K-REACH IT system in Korean, and some documents can be submitted in English, but most of them must be in Korea. Next, please. The K-REACH has distinct processes for existing substances, PECs, and new substances. Existing substances that have not yet reached registration deadline may be manufactured or imported with pre-registration. In the event that the deadline has already passed, registration must be completed before manufacturing or importing commence. A total of 510 chemicals designated as PECs do not have a deadline for registration. which must be completed before they are released into the Korean market. Until this year, new substances had to be registered before manufacturing or importing more than 100 kilograms per year. However, beginning next year, the threshold will change to 1 ton or more per year. The K-REACH authority reviews the completeness of the registration data related to hazardous and reviews in detail the exposure scenario and uses of the CSR. Once this review is completed, the authority will issue a registration notice. However, even after the registration notification, the review is conducted once again through a hazard assessment. This is because, once again, a detailed review is conducted to designated authorization, restriction, and prohibition substances. Next, please. Pre-registration is procedure to obtain different deadlines for different tonnages. Please note that different registration tonnage bans apply depending on the annual manufacturing and import tonnage, and the registration grace period is set differently. In order to determine your deadline, please consider the tonnage of substance you manufactured and export to South Korea. Next, please. Yeah, the term late pre-registration is not mentioned in the legal text, but used in this presentation to distinguish between the two types of pre-registration. Even though the pre-registration window has closed, late pre-registration is allowed to existing substances that are placed on the South Korean market for the first time, provided the extended registration deadline has not passed. Late pre-registration must be submitted for the substance before first manufacturing or importing of the substance. With the late pre-registration, you can place the substance on the South Korean market until the applicable extended registration deadline and enables you to join the joint submission for the purpose of the eventual registration. Please note that submitting a late pre-registration does not obligate you to register the substance. If you do not wish to register, you may only manufacture or import the substance until the applicable extended registration deadline. Next, please. Pre-registration requires the following information: the substance's name and case number, estimated annual import or manufacturer tonnage band is given based on in what tonnage band you wish to register. It can be updated, and classification and labeling of the substance according to GHS. Uses information and the legal entity information. It is taken from the K-REACH IT system based on account details. In case of OR, it needs importer information. The importer information includes the company name, business license number, location, contact details, etc. It is also possible to change some of the information except for the basic chemical information and register. However, you can also co-register by changing some of the information except for the basic chemical information. You you don't need to modify your pre-registration for the information you changed during the co-registration. Completion and submission of the pre-registration to the MOE is done using the K-REACH IT system. Any updates related to the pre-registration information should be made with 1 month of the trigger for change in the information. Next, please. Yeah, note that pre-registration only applies to existing substances, not new substances. Next, please. Existing substances must be registered by more than one company. When a substance is intended to be K-REACH registered by one or more companies, a joint submission of core registration data is required. This form, the Chemical Substance Information Communication Organization, is CICO, is formed for companies wishing to register the same substance jointly in the K-REACH system. The lead registrant is one company, and the other co-registrants can submit materials after the lead registrant has registered. Next, please. Yeah, so the CICO is composed of qualified lead registrants and passive and active members include. Lead registrants' roles are initiation the registration work by forming CICO and designating the RCC. And co-registrants cooperate with the CICO as active or passive members. When lead registrants request the substance identity, co-registrants should provide all related information. And lead registrants will collect, assemble, and review the data requirements. If co-registrants have the data, they should share data. The lead registrar's most important role is manage and submit registration documents before the deadline. This is because K-REACH relies heavily on scheduling to ensure that all co-registrants are registered by the deadline. It is important for the lead registrant to manage the schedule to ensure that all co-registrants are registered before the deadline under K-REACH. Next, please. Yeah, the section in red are for the joint submissions. So the information submitted by the lead registrant can be imported from the IT system and submitted individually. The first part, information K-REACH needs is manufacturer or importer's name, location, and representative person. Chemical substances information also requires chemical name, molecular formula, and structural formula. And the third part is needed information related to use of chemical, including detailed use, etc. From 4 to 8 parts are covered in the lead registrants. The data contain classification and labeling of chemical, physical, and chemical properties, and hazardous, etc. The test report can be in either Korean or English, but the test summary then must be submitted it must be written in Korean. And guidance on safe use contents are same as SDS information, such as personal protective equipment, first aid measures. The risk means the chemical risk assessment with exposure scenario describing handling, exposure controls, and management measures during the life cycle of the chemical. Next, please. This is very similar to the EU, where different tonnages bands require different test materials to be submitted for testing. In many cases, EU registrations are utilized, but it is also common to use test data produced in KREACH. Next, please. Yeah, the dossier submitted by co-registrants is similar to EU-REACH, but KREACH emphasizes the risk assessment. Registrants under 10-ton age are not required to submit hazard data that can be risk assessed, but instead use and exposure info must be submitted. It is very important. Next, please. Yeah, this is the page to fill out the registration documents in the KREACH IT system. The red text indicates additional information that must be submitted compared to the information submitted by the EU-REACH co-registrant. Specifically, with regard to substance information, test results are not required to be submitted, except for polymer chemicals. Next, please. In the KREACH IT system, registrants must fill out a total of 3 pages of information and press the submit button. But this page you see now is the second page. Here you need to fill in the use and classification and labeling. And entries are in the default format of 1, but you can add multiple entries via the add button. Next, please. It looks like there are a lot of documents to submit, but the required documents are marked with a small asterisk, and there are only a few of them. Finally, there is a section where you can upload any other documents you wish to submit. Next, please. You've now reached the final page. To pay the registration fee, you can purchase an import stamp issued by the Korean government and input your reference number and receipt file. The fee varies depending on the size of the company, but it does not tell you the fee for the characteristics of the registrant. So you need to check it and purchase the appropriate amount of import stamp. Next, please. Yes, let's talk about how long you can expect the registration process to take. Next, please. This webinar will focus on the co-registration of existing substances. Next, please. Basically, before manufacturing and importing existing substances in Korea, you must complete pre-registration and join SICO. Since MOE has support projects, preparation related to registration, including the election of representatives, are usually carried out at the time of application for support projects. Once the representative has been elected, it should either engage active members or contract a consulting company to assume the representative's duties. Then the contracted consulting company gather active members and starts the joint registration through the agreement between the members and kick-off meeting. Next, please. Similar in concept to the SIF in EU REACH, K-REACH has a SICO. SICO is Chemical Substance Information Communicative Organization. Registration Consortium is steering entity of the SICO comprised of the lead registration and active member. And representative consulting company is third-party consulting company that is allocated to the care of the SICO management and preparation of the technical dossiers and CSR with all technical, managerial, and administrative work. An active member is a co-registrant, that is a registration consortium member and actively involved in the registration preparation process and bearing the cost of the registration effort. Passive member is a co-registrant too, but it's not part of the registration consortium and only participating select work of the registration effort. From what is written, it seems like co-registrants supported to share information with the lead registrant, but they delegate most of the lead registrant duties to a consulting firm. So whether it's SICO's lead registrants or member registrant, we only provide information to our consultants and don't share it with our competitors. Next, please. Registrant with data reach and more than 1,000 tonnages is best listed as lead restaurants. And most K-REACH lead restaurants contract our RCC, representative consulting company, to do the work on their behalf. Most K-REACH lead restaurants contract our RCC. This is because K-REACH authority requires contact with the lead registrant after submission of the registration dossier. So lead registrants prefer to contract with a competent professional RCC to do their work for them. Yes, the role of the RCC is therefore even more important in K-REACH than in EU REACH. Depending on which RCC you contract with, the cost and the time it takes to register can be very different. That's why specialized consulting company with a long tradition suggest doing K-REACH together with REACHLaw. If a representative registrant is not elected, joint registration will not be possible. Next, please. After the lead registrant is elected, RCC contact active members, sign agreements with lead registrant and active members, gathering the possessions of materials, and hold a kickoff to share the approximate registration fee and schedule. Next, please. One of the most important documents required by K-REACH is the chemical safety assessment. This is because substances with the same use and same scenario may have different exposure to workers depending on level of safety management in the workplace. Next, please. K-REACH requires registrants of 10 tonnages or more to conduct an exposure assessment for all uses for for which they wish to register, regardless of whether they are already registered. This makes the cost of the co-registrants and the burden of investigating downstream user uses significant. This is why co-registrants also rely on the capability of their consultants. Next, please. Yes, this registration fees paid to the approval authorities are very low under K-REACH. Therefore, most of the cost is for the purchase of the LOA, followed by consultants fee. But the total cost is lower for active members than for passive members. This is because passive members do not receive a refund of the LOA fee. This is not required by law, but is the practice of all K-REACH SECOs. Next, please. I mentioned earlier that the fees paid to the authorities are low, depending on the size of the company, but no more than 140 euros. Next, please. We recommend starting the joint registration process as soon as possible. The authority has changed from NIR to NICS, but the authorizing officer has not changed from NIR to NICS, so the process remains the same. For SECOs that are already registered, the timing of the passive registrants' decision to join is important. But for SECOs that are still in the process of lead registrant, we are surveying them first. This is because NICS, our current accreditation authority, has announced a delay in the time it takes to register. Given these various circumstances, it may not be possible to complete registration this year unless the co-registrant agreement is completed in September. Don't forget, K-REACH authority reviews the registration data for completeness and checks the exposure scenarios in detail before making registration decision. Every registrant. Next, please. I propose for registration within 2024 deadline. I'm stressing the time is running out. Designate a contact person and contact the RCC through your OR in Korea to indicate your intention to participate in joint submission. Your OR may have already received an email from the RCC requesting confirmation of your intention to register. As a reminder, we recommend that you submit your registration documents by the end of September to ensure that your registration is completed for this year. REACHLaw Korea can provide a list of authorities for the 1,024 substances registered under K-REACH. So even if you do not have an OR in Korea, you can still register through us this year. At REACHLaw, next please. At REACHLaw Korea, we kept abreast of the latest K-REACH developments to understand our impact on our customers. The most recent announcement is from 1st January next year, the registration threshold for new substance will be lowered from 0.1 tons to 1 ton. And from 7th August next year, MSDS will also needed to be marked with the changed name of the substance of concern. Next, please. Yes, South Korea is supposed to support small business in all its regulations by the law. Carriage is no different. In South Korea, most small and medium-sized enterprises take advantage of government-funded programs to register their chemicals with carriage. But appointed or from overseas manufacturers are not eligible. However, CEOs can indirectly save money if their substances are selected for support programs such as support for test data production costs. Next, please. Existing substance register support program is a comprehensive support program that supports the other three programs. In particular, exposure scenario supports the most challenging work to K-REACH registration, the downstream user investigation part of the exposure scenario. And thank you. Gagan will continue to present Q&A part. Thank you.
Thank you, GA, for a very comprehensive and practical advice to the audience. And I apologize also that we have already 10 minutes ahead of the scheduled closing of this webinar. But what I would do is, in the respect of time, if you have like questions and answers, we will have few which we received during the registrations. I will take those first, and I would recommend that if there are any questions, please send it to us via email, as we respect time for other participants, and then we'll be happy to provide answers to you. So these are the questions that we received on prior to the registration. So I think the number one is saying that like what they are interested in K-REACH registration of the single product. And I think this webinar must have helped you to understand the chemical substances are registered, and if you have a cache number of this single chemical, you need to see whether it's a mixture or a chemical. But I see it's a chemical, then you can find out whether it's an existing chemical. And if it's an existing chemical, you can proceed with the late fee registration and registration by appointing an OR. And if it's not an existing, then you need to apply for direct registration, and it's a new substance. So this, I believe you have received the answer from this presentation. But if you have any follow-up question from this answer, please contact us again. The second question is more of a generic process that they would like to understand how K-REACH registration, and this is how we have set up this webinar. So I believe you have got the information on the process and how the registrations are made in K-REACH, and of course the timeline is important, as I mentioned, and GA also mentioned that you need to really look into the timeline of the registration. And then we have the third question, which is on specific to the product that is used in cosmetic industry as raw material. So do we need a registration? So I think specific to the regulation, I would request GA if you can take this question and provide your comments and suggestions for this question. GA, can you hear me on this question? If you can provide your feedback.
Oh, sorry. I just drink some water. Yes, I don't understand the MEA. Could you explain more MEA? MEA means MOE. If the MEA means MOE, in case of the not yes, that's it. They are covered. Costs are covered under MOE. But
Okay,
or is not. Yeah.
and this question on this slide, which is number 3, like our product is used in cosmetic industry as a raw material. Do we require registration?
Oh yes. Sorry, yes. Our in case of the all contents are the cosmetic materials. We need in case of that no need to require registration in carriage. But we have to more detail the contents or the applicable law. Please detail we have to more detail.
Okay, so I would request this participant to send a question by email, so you have a confirmed answer from our colleagues, and then I think you can proceed with that answer with your customer and proceed with this product sales to Korea. So with this, I think I have to end this session because we are way ahead of usually the webinar, but I think if there is anything on Wiki to add on specific advice on market access initiative, I think it's a CHEMEXCIL like you being a nodal agency appointed by Ministry of Commerce, and you are really handling this. Do you have anything to add on market access initiative? This there is a question on the chat regarding that. So if you're there, then you can make some comment to this. I don't think that Wiki is there, so I will basically make a comment that usually as far as the market access initiative text is concerned, yes, it should be eligible because you are basically applying for a market access registration, so only registration you can apply. But there are challenges probably could be there due to the language of the documents that are required to be submitted, because ministry has a set data requirement for MEI claim. But it should be possible also to have an English translation of these documents via your consultants so that you can complete your requirements. So I would request to send this questions to CHEMEXCIL and the responsible people handling the MEI claim. I think they could guide better in terms of how this application will be accepted. But yes, in general, you should apply for MEI claim. And Vicky has mentioned yes to this answer also. So it should be, they should apply for reimbursement within 90 days of your registration number. So for K-Reach also, MEI is they are accepting, and they need your application within 90 days of registration. So it's confirmed by CHEMEXCIL also. Any other questions anybody wants to ask? Okay, so I guess if there are no questions, I'm then close this session. I would like to thank everyone for their attention, and also CHEMEXCIL once again for for planning this joint webinar and inviting members. I hope this is useful for the members and they understood the practical handling of this requirement. And feel free to contact us. GA is based in Seoul, so feel free to contact any one of us, and we'd be happy to assist you with any query on KReach. And we will also be presenting information on exemptions, so please attend the webinar by end of August. Register for that, and of course, CHEMEXCIL will send some other circulation if needed. With this, I thank you all for joining this session and wish you a good day and take care. Bye-bye.